looked underneath. One thing after another.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Euclid Township Board of Supervisors workshop meeting for the month of August. Today is August 6th. Just a reminder before we begin that today's meeting is being live streamed on the Township YouTube channel as well as recorded. And now the meeting has been called to order. We'll jump right into our business agenda with the first thing up for today as the presentation on multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan.
With us today, we have representatives from the Department of Emergency Services that are going to kind of give us an overview of the hazard mitigation plan, and then that'll be on consideration for adoption on Monday night's agenda. So turn it over to Kylie. You use that and.
Is this ready to go? Perfect. So as Bobby was saying, my name is Kylie McGowan. I'm an emergency planning coordinator with Chester County DES. And one of our most recent major projects has been the completion of the Chester County Hazard Mitigation Plan. It's been a multi-year process that we've worked with all 73 municipalities to collect data and collect information regarding active natural hazards in the township to compile into a large-scale county hazard mitigation plan. The plan is now active, so it's active for 5 years. So this plan will span from 2026 to 2031. And your adoption means that formally you can receive different types of federal and state level funding in the case of a hazardous weather or other hazardous incident occurring in the township. It is a federal mandate. It's a state mandate. You're required by law to have it. But we just push it forward for adoption and for presentation so that you actually know what you're adopting and what the township is quote unquote on the hook for when you adopt it. So this is basically what I went over, but it's an outside and inside partner project that we go through and we identify mitigation actions that the townships put forward and say these are things that we'd like to work on in the next 5 years in areas that we know could be affected by different hazards or are affected by different hazards. Obviously in Pennsylvania, most often that leads to is in regard to flooding. In Euclid, you have some other vulnerable things such as you have the turnpike go through, you have a larger population for the size of your township, and just overall going back to that hazardous weather, you never know what could come through. And those mitigation actions really help to address that. So the overall project goal was to provide public opportunities. As I said, we sent this out to the municipalities and said, what do you want to see included in here? What do you want on document, on record that we know this is a problem in our township and we want to work forward? It helps for public understanding of what your township is aware of and things that your public works have addressed and other areas of your township have been called out for or have been affected by in the recent years. So it included risk assessment data, it included population data, it included vulnerable breakdowns of different populations you have within your township and how different incidents could affect those populations. It's a 749 page plan, so it is a beast. We don't ask that you know that entire plan. We only ask that you know what is directly applicable to Euclid Township. And I've covered that coming up. So for the overall county, there were 4 goals and 16 objectives identified in the 2021 HMP, and those goals are remaining relevant. They were carried over into the 2026 HMP. They're things that we still know affect the county, but there were 3 additional goals added to this iteration of the county plan for the overarching area. So this includes ensuring adequacy and continuity of emergency management services during hazard events, ensuring hazard mitigation goals and objectives are consistent with goals of other plans and ordinances in the county and municipalities, and protecting people and assets from the potential impacts of high hazard potential dams. So something we saw reflected most readily in our research and in the data collection was concern for high hazard dams, and just in general, any flooding concerns. So those are the 3 main additional goals that were added. And then each of those goals have 3 to 6 corresponding objectives to guide their completion for the different municipalities that put those forward. So for Upper Euclid, yep, thank you. So for Upper Euclid, Like I said, we only really ask that you know what is directly corresponding to your municipality. It's mentioned just under 100 times in the HMP. The vast, vast majority of that is data points within different data tables. So within vulnerable populations, what percent of your population is over 65? What percent of your population is under 18? What percent of your population lives in the 100-year floodplain? Those are all different kind of data collection points that we have. Yes. I chose the wrong slides. I have a whole bunch of slides and then I hide or unhide depending on what presentation I'm doing.
You have the backup there.
Yes. So like I said, I only made this one time and I included all the townships that requested specific information. And I unhid the wrong slides today. But Euclid Township was mentioned roughly 100 times. Same thing, different data points, different at-risk populations, different things that we observed through collection that we wanted highlighted. So critical details included expected annual losses from various threats and hazards, your vulnerable populations, and various property data. So these are just some of the things that I pulled out. There's a lot more, but these were 4 that I kind of caught my eyes. I was doing my read through. 63% of structures in Euclid Township are in a pipeline hazard area, which I'm sure you're aware of. 79% of all critical facilities exist within pipeline hazard areas. So those are your schools, long-term care facilities, trying to think what else, township buildings or properties. We have a lot of different things that file into the category of critical facilities, but 79% of those within your township are in that pipeline hazard area. You're expected to have annual relatively moderate or relatively high losses due to high winds, and they're included in all countywide mitigation initiatives, which includes focuses on dam safety implementation and the creation of EOPs for your critical facilities for your township, and other initiatives in your township. These are 5 specific goals that were included in the 2026 HMP for Euclid Township. I won't read those all out, but again, really a focus on dam hazard areas, emergency action plans, and or facilities that you think might be in danger or have suffered in some way as a result of a hazard. So going back to what I said in the beginning, HMPs are required to the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. It just covers you in the case of something happening. If you have a recent HMP adopted for your township, that you recognize, okay, the county has this plan, we're going to adopt it as well as our hazard mitigation plan, we're going to recognize it. It covers that requirement through the state and federal level, and it opens the door for hazard mitigation grant program funding. So if something very large scale happens, all of these different municipalities in the area are likely going to be applying for that funding. If you have this plan adopted as soon as possible, you can reference that and say, you know, it was adopted here, it was adopted now. We know what's in it and we know how it applies for our township and for our citizens. 100% of municipalities participate in the development. We'd like to have 100% adoption, just so it covers you guys. And the general language of the resolution considers the area and citizens of municipality. I had some questions from other municipalities about what the language of the resolution kind of breakdown is. If you want to go over that more specifically, we can. It's a legal document, and it just documents your understanding of the relevancy of the plan and activities. So, yeah. If there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
I don't think I have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So you said this will be on the agenda for Monday?
All right. Anything else for that from the staff? No? All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to number 2, our budget workshop.
So, excuse me, this is the quote unquote official kickoff of the 2027 budget development process. Today, we're not really going to get into line item detail, but instead take a look at the assumptions and priorities that we're using or proposing to use in building the 2027 budget. See if there's any changes, additions, or deletions that the board would like to see. In terms of timeline and process, it's going to look similar to years past, where departments will have their operating and capital requests submitted through the budget software that we have by the middle of September. We'll review revenue projections and personnel requests and capital plans at the September board workshop, and then expenditure requests at the October board workshop. We'll review the draft budget at the November board workshop and formally introduce the draft budget at the November board meeting. And then we'll ask you to consider adoption of the budget and the necessary tax rates at the December board meeting. Before we jump into what next year looks like, we thought we'd just spend a minute to talk about current year performance in each of kind of the main funds that we have. In terms of the general fund, we've collected just under 60% of our budgeted revenue, totaling $8.1 million, slightly higher than budgeted. Building permit activity has contributed positively to that, both Hankin and Gray Farm. Our EIT is surprisingly up slightly more than budgeted, but overall revenue is on track. The same can be said for expenditures, where we've spent about 51% of our expenditures through July. Police overtime is high, but the salary side is low. We have a vacancy, technically a vacancy with the lieutenant's retirement. And so that's driving a little bit of the expenditures. And our overall HVAC costs have actually exceeded what we planned on. But again, expenditures are overall on track. Sewer fund is performing pretty well. Revenue, we've collected about 61% of what was budgeted, 3.6 million. We've spent about 65%, and that's overall expected to be on track. And then capital fund, we've had lower than anticipated grant revenues, but that's okay because a lot of the grant projects were waiting on grant revenues, so it's kind of a trade-off there. The fire fund is performing as expected, as is the EMS fund. We're anticipating fund balances of $90,000 for the fire fund at the end of the year, and somewhere in the neighborhood of about $187,000 on the EMS fund. Just to note that the EMS fund, as you remember, that's got a year ahead of the fire fund, so a little bit more of a fund balance. For 2027, some of our projections and assumptions that we're working through. We asked Keystone, our EIT collector, for a projection, and they're projecting $10.5 million in earned income, and that includes open space. So about a quarter of that goes towards open space. That's roughly a 4% increase over this year. We did have PFM do an analysis of our earned income, and that kind of found, and I think these projections reflect the fact that our EIT base remains strong, but we should be budgeting conservatively. So it's better to have revenues outperform rather than relying on optimistic forecasts to really balance the budget. Our real estate tax is generally flat. We may see, we can consider just natural growth of probably 0.5%. Transfer tax, we're expecting to be flat, and building permit activity, there's really no significant activity that we're expecting for 2027 to budget on. And then investment income and interest, that'll probably end up flat. It really depends on what the Fed does with interest rates. Salary increases, we're expecting about an average of somewhere 3.25%, 3.33%, of 3.5% contractually obligated for the police, and then somewhere between 3.5% for non-uniform. Health insurance, our specific numbers will get closer to September, October, although the trend has been positive for actual claims spent. Since the switch to a self-funded plan, what did we get? $37,000, somewhere around $37,000 refunded from last year, and I think we were somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 anticipated for this year so far, which is all positive. Fuel, we were kind of taking a look at some of the projections on fuel, and it's actually kind of remarkable when you consider the retail rates that we're all paying at the gas pumps. You look at our weighted average through July, we've been paying $2.66 a gallon for gas, compared to retail of $3.25 to $4.70. Like that's pretty good. We're looks like we've saved about $20,000 if we were comparing that to what we would have paid at the pump. And then our utilities, again, we're expecting some increases there. The primary drivers are just increased demand on the PJM grid, including data center growth, not here in the township, but within the PJM service area, generation capacity, and just record high capacity market prices. Sewer, we're anticipating a couple of big expenses next year, one being West Whiteland for the Clover Mill pump station, our contribution of that. And then Dara is looking at capital increases in anticipation of their construction project. And then the police pension obligations are expected to increase, and we don't really know what the impact from the state mandated COLA will ultimately be. Some structural changes we're looking to make next year. Moving right now, trash collection is in the general fund. We're looking to move that into a proprietary fund. It's more just clean tracking those costs and expenditures and making sure that they balance. Moving the hydrant fund from a tax to a special assessment, that has a positive impact on things. One, it allows us to put this special assessment on any property within 780 feet of a fire hydrant. Right now, we only do 600 feet. And it also allows us to put an assessment against tax exempt properties. So school district and churches and other places like that. One of the things that we did this year, and we'll incorporate into the budget for 2027, is we've kind of grown the insurance trust. We had an insurance trust. It only paid for dental and dental claims. Yeah, dental and maybe hearing aids. We're putting all of the insurance related expenses relating to employee benefits there, and we're able to easier capture those costs and track them. We're looking to close out the water fund at the end of this year, so that won't really be part of the 2027 budget. And then two concepts that we're playing with are trying to create a working capital reserve fund. So each year putting money away, it's different from fund balance, but it would essentially give us the opportunity to cushion increases. So right now we don't have a lot of elasticity in our budget, right? If costs go up, revenues need to come from somewhere. By creating this working capital reserve, we have some money that's not rainy day money, but is available to help cushion those and give us some breathing room so we're not constantly having to adjust rates and fees. And then pay as you go capital versus debt, much the way we probably all run our households. Yeah, you look to take a mortgage out on a house. You don't necessarily look to finance roof replacement or painting of your house. So just looking at different ways to structure that. The priorities that we would look to have reflected in the budget include public safety, infrastructure investments in roads and sewer and stormwater, and open space investments in parks and open space acquisitions. And then, obviously the big question on everyone's mind is always, what's the tax rate going to do? What's going to happen with trash and sewer? Right now, our assumption is trash will remain flat. We'll look at real estate and sewer. We had communicated and planned on up to a $20 increase in sewer going into next year. We will likely need some level of increase, whether that's the full $20 or not. We'll evaluate that. But again, we're kind of looking at a 5-year horizon and where do we need to be to sustain that for 5 years. And then similarly with real estate tax, we'll evaluate any potential increases that need to happen there and kind of go from there. Realize that was a lot. Any questions, thoughts? Are we crazy? Things you want to explore more?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's an outline, high level.
Yay for budget season.
Sue's most favorite time of the year.
It's always budget season. Oh, that's wonderful. And I appreciate that it's a timeline that allows the public to participate in all steps of the process. And it's not just one meeting. And if you miss it, you don't know. Like I said, it's always kind of budget season around here. And I appreciate that throughout the years, the staff have kept very lean margins on the budget to help control what kind of costs we have to pass along to taxpayers. So can't wait. All right, moving along to number 3, business meeting agenda review.
On the business meeting agenda, we'll have a resolution adopting the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. Of another resolution for applying for a municipal assistance program grant to allow us to do a feasibility study on regional trash collection. We'll have the ordinance consideration for the industrial uses ordinance. The Planning Commission gave a recommendation for that last night. Permission to advertise a cable franchise agreement with Comcast. Authorization to bid for equipment rental for some roadway work. Approval of the 8th Amendment to the DARA intermunicipal agreement. This allows us to send flow from Eagle View in Upper Euclid to DARA. Planning Commission appointment, Dan Glenn resigned from the Planning Commission, so we would look to recommend Rachel Fernandez to be appointed there. And then a number of land development pieces. Extension request for 713 Haywood with the Hankin Group. Also with the Hankin Group, conditional use decision acceptance on Eagle View Town Center lots 17 and 20. And then preliminary final land development plan submission for Eagle View Town Center lot 17. And then permission to advertise a conditional use hearing for Carvana at 208 Welsh Pool. So all pretty run-of-the-mill stuff.
Very good. Is there any public comment this afternoon? No. All right. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.